Hello, welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to look at a really useful tool called Panos PHP. So this tool is from Palo Alto Networks. Um, you might have noticed it has PHP on it, but you don't really need to know any PHP to use it. I have zero knowledge in PHP. The tool actually comes with a really useful CLI command line tool. So as long as you can run CLI commands, you should be able to use this tool. I think once we look at the example, it will make more sense to you. So just to give you an idea, what can you do with this tool? I will give you a couple of scenarios. If you work with Palo Alto firewalls long enough, you know you might have thousands and thousands of address object or service object, and then most of the time, some of the objects are not being used anywhere. For example, you just go and create an address object, but you never reference that object in a security policy, for example. And then in the long run, you might end up with, let's say, 500 of the address objects just staying there, not being used anywhere. And Palo Alto doesn't really provide a native way to find and remove remove these address object. So usually I go and create my own Python script to do the cleanup, but I just came across this really good tool. It already comes with quite a lot of features. One of them is finding and removing the unused address object. And then another use case could be you might have multiple address object for a single IP. So let's say I go and create an object for 10.10.10.10, and one of my colleague, he might go and create his own object without knowing there is an object already exist. So again, in the long run, you might end up with all these duplicates. So again, Panos PHP has a built-in support to go and find out all the duplicates and then do the cleanup. Um, to demonstrate this, I have one panorama and I also have a firewall. Let me just close this one. Yeah, so on the if I look at the actual firewall, let me revert the change. So if you look at the actual firewall, I have 6 address object, and then I have 2 address group, and then I have 2 security policies. On the security policies, I'm only using the app server 1 object and then DNS server's address group. So if I go back to the address group, so I'm using DNS servers, which means the Google DNS servers address group is not being used. And if I go back to the address, I'm using the app server 1, but I'm not using app server 2, I'm not using app server subnet, but the Cloudflare and then Google DNS are being referenced in this address group called DNS server, which we are using it in the security policy here, DNS servers. So when I use this tool, I want to remove this Google DNS servers because it's not being used anywhere. And then I also want to remove the app server 2 app server subnet as well. The Google DNS2 is a bit tricky because so the Google DNS2 is a bit tricky because this object is being referenced in one of the address group, but the address group itself is not being referenced. So I will cover this in detail later on. So let's go back to the Panos PHP. So if you go to GitHub under the Palo Alto Networks, you can see the last update for this tool was back in 2023. So I'm recording this video July 2024. So it's been almost a year since we got the last update. And if you look at the maintainer, there are 3 contributors. And then if I go to one of the contributor, he actually forked this Panos PHP because my understanding is Palo Alto is not actively developing. I can be wrong, so don't take my word for it. So Palo Alto is not going to release any updates, but the lead developer, he is actually actively maintaining this repo. So he forked the repo and then he released an update 3 weeks ago. So it's up to you which one do you want to use, but personally I always use this specific repo. So for the installation, if you scroll down, I put all the links on my blog post, so you can find all the links if you go to my blog post. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about just taking a note of these for now. So the installation is extremely simple. So if you scroll down to installation, and then if you go to readme docker, it actually have a really good explanation on how to install this tool. I'm going to be running this on my MacBook, and then I actually tried this on Ubuntu as well, but unfortunately I haven't tried this on Windows. So just have a look at this diagram to understand how to run this in Windows. So if you need to use this on macOS, you need to have Docker desktop installed. So you don't really need to know much Docker for you to run this tool. You just need to download and install Docker desktop, which is extremely simple. And then you just need to run a single command, and then that's about it. But before we run the command, I just want to mention something. So the way the tool works is it can either connect directly to the firewall and then do all the cleanup. But if you're not comfortable just doing all the cleanup directly on the firewall, you can actually export the config from your firewall, and then you can tell Panos PHP to work with the configuration file rather than connecting directly to the Palo Alto Firewall. So for you to provide the configuration from your host machine, which is macOS in this case, into the container, you have to use this Docker volume. So that's why I created a directory called Panos PHP, and then I put my running config inside it. So if I go to my terminal, I am actually in the Panos PHP directory. So if you are going to be working or connecting directly to the firewall, you don't really need to worry too much about it, but I will just show it to you anyway. So here, just run this, copy this command, and then go to your terminal, and then just run it, and then that's it. You are already inside the container. So if I go to my Docker desktop, you can see this container was started 5 seconds ago, so everything looks good. So I'm inside the container. You can see I have this root user. And if I do ls inside the container, I can actually see the running config, which actually I created on my host machine. I explained this on my blog post, so just feel free to go and have a look at it if you still don't understand. So now we install Panos PHP. It's time to put it to the test. So I explained all the commands and everything in detail on my blog post, but for you to use this tool, you had to use this Panos PHP CLI command, and you had to pass some mandatory parameters. So for example, if you want to connect directly to the Palo Alto Firewall, so you had to say in mean you are providing some information to the Panos PHP, and then you are saying I want to use the API, so in is equal API, and then you had to put the IP address of the firewall, which is 10.10.0.27, and then because Panos PHP supports quite a lot of objects in the Palo Alto Firewall. So when I say object, it can manage security policies, it can manage NAT rules, so on and so forth. But for this example, we are only looking at address object. So you also have to use a type called address, and then you have to pass a filter. So here we are saying, okay, I want to use the Panos PHP CLI, and then I'm saying this is my firewall, go and connect to it. And then once you connected, I want to work with the type address, which means address object and address group. And we now need to tell, okay, what kind of address that you want to work with. So here I'm going to use a filter. So let me quickly show you the filters available to you. So if I remove this, if I say type address, and then if you do list filters, it will show you all the filters available to you. So the one that we are interested in is object is unused. So this one, so we are saying we are only interested in the address object which is unused. So if I do Panos PHP in is equal API and just bring it up 10.10.0.31, which is my firewall IP, and then type is equal to address, and then for the filter within quotes I'm saying filter is equal object space is unused. So I'm going to target all the unused object, and then at the end I have to pass another mandatory parameter actions. So what do I want to do with these objects that we just filtered? So I'm saying I just want to delete them, DELE, just want to delete them. So if I go to the firewall, you can see at the moment I have 6 address object and 2 address group. So if I just run this command, because I'm connecting to the firewall the first time, it's asking for an API key or the username. So I'm going to say admin Cisco123, and it's connecting to the firewall now. And then it's saying it actually deleted 2 address object and then 1 address group. So if I go back to the firewall and if I refresh, you can see 2 of the address objects are gone and then the address group is gone. So this Google DNS2 is still hanging around because the reason for this is this address object was referenced in the address group before. So that's why the Panos PHP didn't delete this address object. But if I go and run it again, because the address group is gone now, so this should delete the Google DNS2 now. So as you can see, this is now gone as well. So if I refresh, it's gone. So as you can see, it took me just a few minutes to download and install the Panos PHP, and then just run a single command saying I want to target this firewall. The object I'm interested in is the address, and then I'm passing a filter saying the filter is object is unused, and then I'm saying the action is delete. And then you can, before commit, make sure you just double check and make sure the tool didn't remove something that you don't want to delete. So always make sure you check everything, triple check everything before committing the changes, because Panos PHP doesn't commit the changes. But I'm just going to revert it now. Yeah, so everything should come back now. Yeah, so on the blog post I covered how to handle or how to use Panorama. It's more or less the same, you just need to specify which device group you are working with. So that's the only difference. So feel free to check out my blog post, and yeah, that's all for this video. I will speak to you in another video.